Captain Marcus Vale had seen enough battles to know that victory rarely felt like triumph. The mud and smoke of Cyros 7 still clung to him as he walked toward the command tent, the weight of 15 years in service pressing against every step. The camp was alive with the sounds of aftermath crackling fires, distant shouts, the heavy grind of machinery clearing debris, but beneath it all lay the uneasy silence that followed death. He had expected a debriefing, maybe a quiet commendation for holding the western ridge, not the strange summons from Colonel Reeves. Inside, the air was thick with the sharp scent of disinfectant and steel. Reeves stood behind a broad table cluttered with tactical maps and half-finished reports. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried the kind of casual authority that silenced doubts before they could form. "Captain Vale," Reeves said, gesturing toward the far corner of the tent, "your performance during the siege was exemplary. Consider this a recognition of your contributions." Marcus turned his head and froze. A woman stood there, tall and motionless, her blue skin glinting faintly under the cold light panels. Silver markings spiraled across her arms and neck like living constellations. Her posture was rigid but not fearful. There was too much dignity in the way she held her chin, too much quiet defiance in her gaze. "She's yours," Reeves said, as though he were handing over an extra ration pack. "A war prize, Captain. Use her as you see fit. Interrogation, consultation, personal service." Marcus blinked, unable to hide his confusion. "Sir, hi. Don't understand. Are you assigning me a prisoner?" "I'm giving you a war prize," Reeves repeated, his tone almost bored. "Local customs, Captain. The Azurans understand this arrangement. She's been processed according to their own cultural protocols. Think of it as both a reward and a resource." Marcus felt a chill settle in his gut. His eyes drifted back to the woman who had not moved, not even when spoken of like she was a piece of equipment. Her eyes, though, told another story. They were sharp, observant, and alive. "With respect, sir," Marcus said, choosing his words carefully, "I'm not comfortable with arrangements that treat prisoners as property." "This isn't how—" "Captain Vale," Reeves interrupted, his voice cutting through the tent like a blade. "You have your orders. This woman fought fiercely against our forces. Azuran law gives the victor complete authority over their defeated. We're simply respecting their customs." "Established by whom?" Marcus asked before he could stop himself, but the look Reeves gave him made it clear the conversation was over. "Report to the quartermaster for appropriate housing," Reeves said, turning his attention back to the maps as if Marcus no longer existed. When Reeves left, the silence in the tent felt heavier. Marcus stood there for a long moment, wrestling with the sour taste of what had just happened. He finally turned toward the woman, meeting her eyes. "I'm Captain Marcus Vale," he said, the words sounding oddly formal given the circumstances. "What's your name?" She studied him with unsettling calm, as if weighing his sincerity. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft yet resonant, carrying the musical cadence of Azuran speech. "I am called Liona." The name felt like a quiet challenge, a reminder that she was not a number or a prize. "Liona," Marcus repeated, committing it to memory. "I want you to know that I don't agree with any of this. You're not property." "Not to me." Her expression did not change, but something flickered in her gaze, a subtle acknowledgement, perhaps, that she believed him. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had faced enemy fire and impossible odds, but this was different. This was a test of who he was when the war wasn't about bullets and blood, but about conscience. As he stood there, watching her stand so still yet so proud, a strange thought struck him. This woman was not just a captured soldier. Something about the way she carried herself, the silence that felt more like choice than submission, told him there was a deeper story waiting beneath the surface. And he had the unsettling feeling that this story was about to change everything. He thought he knew about victory, duty, and the war itself. Marcus couldn't sleep that night. The camp was quiet, but his mind refused to settle. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her Liona standing in the corner of the command tent, silent and proud, as if she were the only real thing in a world built from smoke and lies. The term war prize echoed in his head like a sour note. He had fought to protect lives, not to own them. Yet, here he was, the unwilling custodian of a prisoner who didn't behave like a prisoner at all. He rose from his bunk before dawn, the cold air biting through his fatigues. When he stepped into the makeshift quarters assigned to her, he found her awake, standing by the narrow window slit that looked out over the smoldering ruins of Cyros 7. She didn't flinch when he entered. She didn't even turn her head. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "Do you enjoy this view, Captain? The ruins you've made of my home?" Marcus stopped short. Her words were sharp, but they weren't meant to wound, more like a challenge. "I don't enjoy any of it," he said. "War isn't something you enjoy. It's something you endure." She finally turned to face him, and for a moment he felt like she was peeling back every layer of him with her gaze. Her silver markings caught the dim light, glinting like molten metal. "Then why are you here?" she asked. The question hit harder than any accusation. He didn't have an easy answer, but before he could speak, the door to the quarters hissed open. A young lieutenant entered with a datapad, his face pale. "Captain Vale," the lieutenant said, "Colonel Reeves requests your presence at the command station. It's urgent." Marcus nodded, then looked at Liona. "I'll be back," he said. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt like leaving her alone was a mistake. Like something vital might happen while he was gone. She gave no response, only a small tilt of her head that could have meant anything. The command station was tense when Marcus arrived. Reeves was hunched over a display, reviewing reports with narrowed eyes. He looked up as Marcus entered. "Captain, we've intercepted Azuran communications. Resistance forces are regrouping faster than expected. I want you to question the prisoner." Marcus stiffened. "Interrogation isn't my specialty." "You'll make it your specialty," Reeves snapped. "We need intel, and she's your responsibility now. You think I handed her to you just so you could play diplomat?" Marcus clenched his jaw, his thoughts flashing back to Leona's unyielding gaze. Something in his gut told him that forcing her to talk would accomplish nothing. If anything, it would destroy the fragile thread of trust forming between them. "Sir," Marcus said carefully, "if we push too hard, we risk." "I don't care about risk," Reeves interrupted. "We need results. Do your job." When Marcus returned, Liona was seated cross-legged on the floor, her hands resting lightly on her knees. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "They want you to break me," she said, as if she had been listening through the walls. Marcus sighed, leaning against the frame of the door. "I don't believe in breaking people," he said, "but they're expecting answers I don't think you'll give." Her eyes softened slightly, though her voice remained cool. "You're right. I won't give them what they want. But I might give you something else if you're willing to listen." The way she said it sent a ripple of unease through him. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "What is it you want me to hear?" She studied him for a long moment before answering. "The truth about why I'm here. About why I didn't fight to the death like the others." Marcus frowned. "You're saying you wanted to be captured?" "No," she said. "I'm saying my capture was arranged." The words froze him in place. "Arranged? By who?" "By those who fear what I represent," she replied, rising slowly to her feet. "And perhaps by some among your own people." A chill ran through Marcus as her words sank in. "You're telling me there's a conspiracy." "I'm telling you," she said, stepping closer, that you've been made a part of something far larger than this war. Something neither side can admit to without losing everything. Marcus swallowed hard. For the first time, he saw not just a prisoner or even an enemy soldier, but someone carrying a secret so dangerous it could tear apart the fragile balance of power between their species. And for the first time, he wondered if his loyalty to orders was about to collide head-on with his loyalty to what was right. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about her words. My capture was arranged. The phrase echoed through his mind like an alarm that wouldn't shut off. It wasn't just the weight of what she had said, it was how she said it, calm, certain, as though she knew the kind of fire she had just handed him. He spent half the night pacing, trying to reconcile his loyalty to command with the annoying suspicion that his own people had done something unforgivable. At first light, he went to her quarters. The door opened quietly, and what he saw made him freeze. Liona stood in the middle of the room, unfastening her battle-worn armor piece by piece. It wasn't the act itself that stopped him cold, it was what lay beneath. Her skin, now uncovered, shimmered faintly under the pale lights of the barracks. The silver markings were no mere decoration. They curved across her shoulders and down her arms like flowing rivers of starlight, intricate patterns that told a story he didn't yet understand. Each symbol seemed alive, humming with a quiet authority. Marcus had seen Azuran soldiers before, but none bore markings like this. These weren't military insignias. They were something older, something deeper. She caught him staring. "You've realized, haven't you?" she said, her voice smooth but carrying an edge. "Those markings," Marcus swallowed, "they're not the kind your soldiers wear." "No," she said simply, "they are the lineage of Elthar. My bloodline, my oath, my people. You've been told I'm just another fighter, but the truth is—" She took a slow step forward, her gaze never breaking from his. "I am Princess Liona, of Elthar, heir to the Azuran throne." The human forces did not just capture a soldier. They kidnapped a royal leader. Marcus felt the floor shift beneath him. His breath caught as a dozen realizations slammed into place. A princess. She wasn't just valuable. She was the beating heart of Azuran resistance. Why would Reeves? His words caught. He already knew the answer. Political advantage. A silenced leader. A war ended by manipulation instead of honor. Liona studied his face as if reading the storm inside him. "There are those among your people and mine who believe that peace can only come if I am erased. Not killed on a battlefield where I could become a martyr, but quietly removed from existence. My capture was no accident, Captain Vale, and I fear you've been chosen to play a role in this, whether you wanted it or not." Marcus's pulse thundered. The image of Reeves's cold, dismissive tone burned in his mind. He hadn't been rewarded for bravery, he'd been selected because he could be trusted to follow orders, even ones that stank of corruption. "I'm not part of this," Marcus said firmly, his voice rough with conviction. "I don't take orders that involve killing innocents or princesses for that matter." Liona tilted her head, a flicker of something soft or maybe trust passing through her eyes. "Then we may have a chance." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, the lights above them flickered. A faint alarm whispered through the camp, too quiet to be an official alert. Leona's posture shifted instantly, her instincts razor-sharp. "We're not alone," she said, her voice low. "Someone is coming." Marcus grabbed his sidearm and moved to the doorway, his military training kicking in. He checked the corridor empty, but Leona's expression told him otherwise. She was listening, the fine lines of her markings almost glowing in the dim light. "3 of them," she whispered. 2 human, 1 Azuran. "They're armed. Their footsteps are too precise to be regular patrols." Marcus's gut tightened. If Liona was right, this wasn't a random check. This was a cleanup. We need to move, he said, scanning the room. There's only one way out. No, Liona said, pointing toward a panel in the far wall. Azuran architecture favors hidden maintenance passages. The humans probably haven't found them yet. She stepped forward, pressing her fingers against a seam Marcus hadn't even noticed. With a hiss, the panel slid open, revealing a narrow shaft leading into darkness. You're telling me we crawl through that? You'd rather wait for them to shoot you? She asked, one brow lifting slightly. Marcus didn't argue. He motioned for her to go first, then followed her into the shaft. It was barely wide enough for his shoulders, the metal walls cold and damp with condensation. Every sound they made echoed faintly, and he found himself holding his breath, straining to hear any sign of pursuit. They crawled for what felt like forever, twisting and turning through the unseen skeleton of the base. At one junction, Liona froze, holding up a hand. Through a small grate ahead, Marcus saw the flash of Boots' 3 soldiers sweeping the corridor beyond. Their weapons were drawn. They're searching, Marcus whispered. They're not searching, Liona corrected softly. They're hunting. They know exactly who they're after. Marcus's jaw tightened. This wasn't just an assignment. Anymore. Reeves's voice, cold and commanding, replayed in his head. She's yours. No, he thought grimly. She's not mine. But she's not theirs either. When the soldiers passed, Liona turned to him. You're different from the others, she said, her voice a low murmur in the close confines of the tunnel. If you weren't, I wouldn't have told you who I really am. Marcus felt the truth of her words settle over him like a weight. Whatever line he thought separated soldier from savior had already been crossed. And he knew, in that moment, that protecting her was no longer just an act of defiance against his orders. It was the only thing that felt right. The maintenance shaft felt endless, a labyrinth of cold metal and shadows. But Marcus and Liona moved with quiet urgency, their breaths shallow, every sound magnified in the claustrophobic silence. The deeper they crawled, the more Marcus felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing against his back, as though the walls themselves carried the whispers of the conspirators hunting them. Stop, Liona said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. She tilted her head, her silver markings glowing faintly as if catching vibrations in the air. They're closing in from both sides, 3 ahead, 2 behind. Marcus froze, his heart hammering. He had been a soldier long enough to know the rhythm of a tactical sweep, but this was different. Whoever these people were, they weren't moving like regular patrol units. They were too quiet, too deliberate. He glanced over his shoulder into the shadows of the shaft. They know we're here. Leona's eyes met his in the dim light. Then we need to be somewhere they're not expecting, now. She pressed her palm against a small, almost invisible panel above her head. With a soft hiss, the section of wall slid open, revealing a vertical crawl space leading into what looked like a service conduit. Do you even know where this leads? Marcus whispered. No, she admitted, a trace of a smile flickering across her face. But I know it's not where they want us. Marcus followed her without hesitation, his boots scraping against the metal rungs as they climbed. He could hear faint movement in the shaft below, a soft clang of a rifle stock, the muted murmur of Cum's chatter. Whoever was down there was. Closing in. When they emerged into the conduit, they found themselves in a narrow hallway lined with dormant power conduits and access panels. The low hum of the station's energy systems vibrated under their feet. Marcus moved to the far end of the hallway, checking for cameras. There were none, at least none active. Whoever's behind this, Marcus said, lowering his voice, they have high-level access. They're overriding security protocols. Which means they're not acting alone, Liona added. Her voice carried no fear, only grim understanding. You have someone on your side feeding them information, maybe more than one. Marcus's gut clenched. He thought of the officers he trusted, men and women he had fought alongside for years, and felt a sudden twist of doubt. Who among them would sell out their own command for political power? A faint noise, a whisper of footsteps, broke his thoughts. Marcus motioned for Liona to stay low as he crouched by the corner, peeking into the adjacent corridor. 2 armed soldiers, both in black armor with no insignia, were sweeping the area. They weren't wearing standard issue gear. These were specialists. Assassins, not guards. Marcus weighed his options. He could take them maybe, but it would alert everyone else. Instead, he tapped Liona on the arm and signaled for silence. They moved into an unused storage bay nearby, slipping inside just as the soldiers passed. The room was dark except for the thin strips of amber, emergency lighting along the ceiling. Crates were stacked high, casting jagged shadows across the floor. Marcus crouched behind one, his sidearm drawn, every muscle tense. Beside him, Liona crouched gracefully, her breathing steady. "They will sweep this room," she murmured. "Not if we make them look somewhere else," Marcus said. He scanned the crates, spotting a loose panel on one. "Cover your ears." He picked up a small metal piece from the floor and hurled it across the room. It hit the panel with a loud clang, and for a moment, everything went still. Then, as expected, the soldiers moved toward the noise, their rifles raised. Liona didn't wait for his signal. She moved like liquid shadow, silent and lethal. Before Marcus could blink, she had slipped behind one of them, disarming him with a twist and pressing the rifle's muzzle against the other soldier's chest. Marcus stepped out with his weapon, covering them both. "Who sent you?" Marcus demanded that the soldier didn't answer. His face was hidden beneath a black visor, but Marcus could feel the defiance radiating from him. Leona's voice was like ice. "If you don't speak, I'll make you regret it." "I'm Azuran, and we do not bluff." The soldier hesitated. Then, through clenched teeth, he spat. "Colonel Reeves." "You weren't supposed to know." "She wasn't supposed to make it this far." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Reeves. The man who had handed Liona to him with that smug tone. Now it all made sense. He was the architect of this nightmare. Liona shoved the soldier back and looked at Marcus, her silver markings glimmering like the sharp edge of a blade. "We can't run anymore," she said. "We need to turn this hunt on them." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we take the fight to Reeves." But as they slipped out of the storage bay, a harsh voice crackled over the comms in the corridor outside. "Target is moving. Vale is with her. If he resists, shoot to kill." Marcus froze. The order had been broadcast openly, without hesitation. They weren't even pretending anymore. For a heartbeat, the world went still. Then Leona's hand brushed his, steady and firm. "You're not alone, Marcus," she whispered. "Not anymore." Together, they vanished back into the shadows, ready to strike first before the trap could close. The corridors of the Cyros 7 base were no longer familiar to Marcus. They felt hostile, alien, like a maze designed not to protect but to trap. Alarms pulsed faintly in the distance, not the sharp wails of an official alert, but a low, sinister an unauthorized frequency that whispered of covert operations and silent executions. Every flicker of the overhead lights felt like a warning. Marcus and Liona moved through the half-lit passages like ghosts, their breaths shallow and controlled. He had switched his comms to passive mode. The normal chatter of the base had gone. Dead anyway. Reeves had turned the entire installation into a hunting ground. Marcus wasn't just disobeying orders anymore. He was officially marked as a traitor. Liona walked slightly ahead of him, her posture steady, every movement deliberate. The silver markings on her arms caught the dim light like threads of moonlight, woven into her skin. "The emergency beacon is our only chance," she whispered. If we trigger it, the signal will reach both Azuran and human command channels. Reeves won't be able to bury this conspiracy. Marcus nodded grimly. The beacon's in the communications tower 2 kilometers across a facility crawling with his people. He pulled up a mental map of the base, every hallway and bulkhead. Etched into his soldier's memory. We can't fight through them. We'll need to go underneath. Maintenance tunnels again? She asked. Not exactly, Marcus said. He crouched by a wall panel, prying it open with the edge of his combat knife. Behind it, the shadowy innards of the station awaited. There's an old power conduit that runs parallel to the primary hallways. I don't think Reeves's people have access to the schematics. Leona's lips curved in something that might have been the ghost of a smile. Then we use the dark paths they fear. The power conduit was barely wide enough for one person, forcing them to move single file, their boots scraping against metal coated with years of dust. Marcus went first, his sidearm drawn, flashlight dimmed to its lowest setting. Every sound, the creak of metal, the distant thrum of generators was amplified 100-fold. Halfway through, Leona stopped abruptly. Listen, she whispered that Marcus stilled. A faint grinding echoed from behind them, rhythmic and deliberate. His blood ran cold. They're using drones, he realized, scouting the conduits. How close? Close enough, Marcus sighed, scanning for an access hatch. He found one, twisted the lock, and shoved it open. They slipped out into a storage module stacked with spare power cells. Leona closed the hatch silently and leaned against it, her breathing steady. We can't outrun drones in the conduits, she said. We need a diversion. Marcus's mind raced. If we overload a power cell, the resulting discharge will fry any drone sensors in the tunnels. That will also alert Reeves, Leona pointed out. Marcus smirked grimly. Good. Let him think we're cornered while we move somewhere he's not watching. Together, they rigged one of the smaller power cells with improvised wiring. Marcus felt her fingers brush his as she handed him a cable, her touch warm despite the chill in the air. It was a fleeting moment, but something passed between them, trust, unspoken but absolute. When the overload detonated, the corridor was filled with a pulse of blue-white light, and the distant grinding of the drones cut out instantly. The silence afterward was heavier than before. They moved swiftly now, using the chaos as cover. Marcus led them to a concealed service stairwell that climbed straight to the upper levels. From here, they could see the communications tower through a narrow viewport, its tall structure outlined against the night sky. But there was a problem. A group of Reeves's black-armored specialists guarded the base of the tower, their weapons glowing faintly with power charges. Marcus crouched low, scanning their positions. We can't go through them, he said. We need them to fight each other. Leona tilted her head, considering. Your security systems are automated, correct? Partially, Marcus replied. What are you thinking? If you flag them as hostile intruders, the automated defense turrets will target them. She smiled faintly. Chaos is the best ally when your enemies think they own the night. Marcus hesitated, but he knew she was right. Accessing his command tablet, he pulled up the emergency security interface. With a few keystrokes and overrides, he flagged every unregistered weapon signature as unauthorized combatants. The effect was immediate. Red lights strobed across the courtyard, and an automated voice boomed. Security breach detected. Hostile forces identified. The turrets deployed from hidden panels in the walls, firing without hesitation. Reeves's specialists scattered, some shouting into their comms, others trying to return fire while ducking the automated barrage. The night became a storm of plasma bolts and ricocheting sparks. Marcus grabbed Leona's hand. Now. They sprinted across the chaos, weaving between cover, the scream of gunfire close enough to rattle Marcus's teeth. A stray bolt singed the metal just inches from Leona's shoulder, but she didn't flinch. She was moving like a soldier again, her grace born of instinct and training. By the time they reached the tower's access door, Marcus's lungs were burning. He keyed the override and pulled her inside, slamming the hatch shut behind them. Tower was quiet, its interior humming with raw energy from the beacon core. Marcus exhaled and looked at Liona. Once we send this signal, there's no going back. Reeves will throw everything he has at us. Then we make sure he fails, she said, her silver markings gleaming as if lit from within. Marcus nodded, his jaw set. Let's end this. The emergency beacon roared to life with a low, resonant hum that filled the communications tower, vibrating through the metal floor beneath Marcus's boots. The console's hollow displays flared bright blue as the signal broadcast launched, shooting out across encrypted channels that neither Reeves nor his conspirators could intercept. Marcus watched the confirmation lights blink, each one representing a recipient far beyond this base. Human command, Azuran diplomatic relays, civilian oversight boards. The truth was out. For a fleeting moment, he felt something close to relief. But then the tower shuddered, and the warning klaxons screamed. They're overriding the tower's lockdown, Marcus said, his voice taut with tension. Liona stepped closer, her expression unreadable but fierce. Reeves will come himself. This time, he cannot allow you to leave alive. Not with me standing beside you. Marcus drew his sidearm, checking the charge. Then we hold until reinforcements pick up that broadcast. It's the only way. The door controls sizzled under an unauthorized hack attempt, sparks leaping from the panel. Reeves's men were cutting their way in. Marcus crouched behind the console, gesturing for Liona to take cover on the opposite side. His mind was calculating angles, escape routes, anything to keep them alive. Marcus, Liona said softly. And when he looked up, he saw a quiet determination in her eyes that startled him. You've already done more than any soldier I have known. Whatever happens, my people will remember that a human captain defied his own to protect what was right. The words steadied him more than she could know. The door blew inward with a hiss of plasma cutters. Smoke poured into the room as 5 black-armored specialists stormed inside, their weapons raised. Behind them stepped Colonel Reeves himself, his face a mask of controlled fury. Vale, Reeves barked, his voice carrying like a whip crack. You have no idea what you've done. You've endangered this entire operation. This operation is a disgrace, Marcus shot back, his voice cutting through the haze. Kidnapping a foreign leader, silencing anyone who questions you. You're not protecting humanity. You're selling its honor. Reeves's lip curled. I gave you a gift, Captain. A chance to shape history. Instead, you chose a traitor's path. She's not a prize, Marcus said, his grip tightening on his weapon. She's a princess. A leader. And you've been trying to bury that truth since day one. Reeves didn't flinch. He raised his hand in a signal, and that was when Marcus fired. The first shot took down one of the specialists, sending chaos erupting in the small chamber. Plasma bolts screamed past Marcus's head, searing holes into the consoles. Liona moved like water, grabbing a fallen rifle and sweeping 2 soldiers off their feet with the precision of a trained warrior. In the frenzy, Marcus caught Reeves's eye. The colonel had drawn his own weapon, but there was hesitation in his stance. Reeves wasn't used to fighting his own men, especially not one of his best captains. This ends now, Reeves, Marcus growled, advancing even as the firefight raged. You can stand down, or you can be the man who killed his own. In the name of corruption. Reeves's answer was a gunshot that missed Marcus by inches. The fight was brutal and short. By the time the last specialist fell, Smoke filled the chamber, and sparks rained from ruined consoles. Reeves was bleeding from a graze on his shoulder, his weapon lost, but his glare burned with defiance. "You think exposing this will save?" "You?" Reeves hissed. "Command doesn't care. They want results." "I gave them results." "No," Marcus said coldly, stepping closer. "You gave them shame. And they'll see it now." As if on cue, the beacon screen flickered, projecting the first incoming responses from High Command. Reeves's face drained of color. The transmissions had gone through. Command knew everything. Liona stepped forward, her presence radiating authority despite the soot and blood staining her skin. "Colonel Reeves," she said, her voice like tempered steel, "your war is over. Both our peoples will hear of your treachery." For a moment, Reeves looked like he might attack her barehanded. But then the tower's outer doors burst open, and a squad of human soldiers, real soldiers, wearing standard colors, stormed in. At their head was General Morrison, his face grim as stone. "Reeves," Morrison said, his voice cold, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, kidnapping, and treason." The colonel's eyes flicked between Morrison, Marcus, and Liona, and in that moment, Marcus saw the truth. Reeves had believed himself untouchable. Now, stripped of power, he looked small. 3 days later, the emergency tribunal convened. The chamber was divided half human, half Azuran. Marcus stood in his formal uniform, his injuries bandaged but his posture unwavering. Beside him, Liona wore ceremonial robes, her silver markings now glowing with a quiet pride he hadn't seen before. General Morrison addressed the assembly first, outlining the conspiracy and Marcus's role in exposing it. Then Liona spoke, her voice carrying across the room with regal calm. "Captain Vale did not see me as a weapon or a trophy," she said. "He saw a person. He saw truth when others would not. His actions have not only saved my life but prevented a war built on lies." The chamber was silent for a moment before the first ripple of applause began. Marcus felt an odd mix of humility and relief. He hadn't done this for recognition, but hearing Leona's words felt like a weight lifting from his chest. Later, outside the tribunal hall, Liona found him standing alone, watching the horizon over Cyros 7. "It's over," Marcus said, though his tone carried the heaviness of someone who knew it wasn't that simple. "It's only beginning," Liona corrected softly, "because now we have to build something better from the ruins they left." Marcus turned to her, and for the first time, he let himself smile. "Then we'll build it together." The new dawn on Cyros 7 looked nothing like the world Marcus Vale had first stepped into. Where once the air had been choked with smoke and the bitterness of conflict, now a fragile calm hung over the horizon. Reconstruction teams, both human and Azuran, worked side by side, clearing wreckage and raising the foundations of something new. The conspiracy had been crushed, but its shadow still lingered, a reminder of how close both species had come to losing everything. Marcus stood on the balcony of the newly commissioned Human Azuran Cultural Center, watching the teams below. He had traded his combat uniform for a simple jacket and civilian boots, but the soldier in him hadn't fully faded. His instincts still scanned for threats, still listened for the footsteps of someone with a weapon drawn. He wasn't sure they ever would. Behind him, the soft, musical cadence of Leona's voice broke the silence. "You are always awake before the sun rises," she said, stepping out onto the balcony. She was dressed in ceremonial robes woven with silver threads, her royal markings gleaming under the pale morning light. "Do humans not sleep when there is peace?" Marcus gave her a sidelong glance, a half-smile forming despite the heaviness in his chest. "Soldiers don't stop scanning the horizon just because the guns are quiet. Old habits die hard." She came to stand beside him, her hands resting lightly on the balcony's edge. "Perhaps it is time to trade old habits for new ones." "You?" are no longer just a soldier, Marcus Vale. You are something far more dangerous to men like Colonel Reeves." He raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous?" "Honorable," she said, meeting his gaze. "Men who thrive on lies fear those who stand for something real." The warmth in her voice disarmed him more than any weapon ever could. He found himself remembering the first time he had seen her silent, proud, a so-called war prize, standing in the corner of a tent. He had never imagined she would become this, a partner, a friend, something more he wasn't ready to put into words. The cultural center had been Leona's idea, but Marcus had fought just as hard to bring it to life. Inside, human and Azuran children sat cross-legged in shared classrooms, learning each other's languages and stories. In the atrium, a group of Azuran artisans demonstrated their luminous threadcraft while human engineers explained new irrigation techniques that would revive the barren soil. It was more than cooperation, it was healing, but not everyone wanted it to succeed. 2 weeks after the tribunal, there had been an explosion at a supply depot, an attempt to frame Azuran refugees and sabotage the peace talks. Marcus and Liona had tracked down the perpetrators, a handful of Reeves's loyalists who had slipped through the cracks. The incident had nearly unraveled everything they were trying to build. "They will try again," Liona said now, as if reading his thoughts. Reeves was only the face of the conspiracy. "Others like him still breathe," Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we make sure their kind has nowhere left to hide." Her gaze lingered on him, steady and unwavering. "We can't fight everyone with guns and tribunals, Marcus. Sometimes the hardest battles are won with patience and trust. That is why this place exists." "And you think I'm patient?" he asked, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "No," she said, smiling faintly in return. "But I think you are learning." That evening, the first Human Azuran Cultural Festival began, a celebration of everything both sides had risked to achieve. Lanterns floated into the night sky, their lights reflecting off the metallic buildings and the faint shimmer of Azuran banners. Marcus walked among the crowd, shaking hands, answering questions, but his mind was always half on Liona. When he found her, she was surrounded by a group of children who were painting silver patterns on their arms in imitation of her markings. "They say I am their story," she said when he approached, her voice soft with wonder. "That they will remember me when they tell their grandchildren about how the war ended." "You're more than a story," Marcus said. "You're the reason this place isn't just rubble." Her eyes met his, and for a long moment, the noise of the festival faded. It was just the two of them, standing in the glow of lantern light and possibility. Later, when the festival had ended and the crowds had gone, Marcus found himself standing on the balcony once again, but this time Liona joined him without a word. She placed a small silver-woven band on the railing between them. It was an Azuran symbol of unity worn not by rulers but by those who chose to share their lives beyond politics and power. He looked at it, then at her. "Liona, are you? I am asking if you will stand beside me," she said, her voice calm but carrying a weight he could feel in his chest. "Not as a soldier, not as a diplomat, but as the man who saw me when everyone else saw only what they wanted." Marcus picked up the band and turned it over in his hands. The soldier in him had no manual for this moment, but the man tired of war, tired of loss, knew exactly what to do. "Yes," he said, his voice firm but quiet. "I'll stand with you." A faint smile spread across her face. Then we begin a new story. Months later, the Cultural Center became the model for similar initiatives across the sector. Human and Azuran colonies that once traded fire now traded knowledge, art, and friendship. There were still whispers of resistance, still enemies lurking in the shadows, but Marcus and Liona faced them together. On the day they were invited to address both the Terran Council and the Azuran High Court. Marcus stood beside Liona on a grand platform overlooking a hall filled with representatives of two worlds. As the crowd applauded, he glanced at her. She stood tall, regal, her silver markings glowing under the lights. But when she looked back at him, her eyes carried something. Softer something meant only for him. Marcus Vale had once been handed a war prize like she was an object. Now, as he stood beside her, he understood how wrong that moment had been. She was not a prize to be claimed, but a partner to be respected. Together, they had taken the ashes of a broken war and forged a future where peace wasn't just a fragile dream, it was a living, breathing reality. And for the first time in years, Marcus believed that maybe, just maybe, this was the kind of victory worth fighting for.